The federal marshal's hand moved toward his gun. Behind Cade Mercer, 15 armed men stood ready. Ruth Harper, accused of murder, waited to be dragged away in chains. The town had come to watch her fall. Then a rider appeared on the horizon, covered in dust, barely able to stand, carrying papers that would change everything. But I am getting ahead of myself. This story began 6 weeks earlier with a pie and a desperate woman who had nothing left to lose. The pie sat untouched on Cade Mercer's desk, still warm. The scent of cinnamon and apples filled his office at Thunder Creek Ranch, mixing with the smell of leather and old tobacco. The woman who had baked it stood on the other side of the massive oak desk, her back straight, despite what was about to happen. Ruth Harper was not what most men would call beautiful. She was solid, substantial, the kind of woman who looked like she could work all day and still have strength left over. Her dress was plain brown calico, clean but worn at the cuffs. Her hands were work-roughened, capable hands. But it was her eyes that caught Cade's attention before he looked away. Steady, unflinching. The eyes of someone who had already survived the worst and knew she could survive whatever came next. Cade barely glanced at the pie. One look at Ruth's frame, at her plain features, and his decision was made. He had seen women like her before, women who thought they could replace what he had lost. They were always wrong. "I don't need a cook," he said. His voice was flat, final. He did not stand. He did not offer her a chair. This was not a conversation that required courtesy. Ruth did not flinch. She did not plead. She simply looked at him for a long moment, and in that moment something passed between them. Recognition, perhaps. Two people who had both learned that life was not fair, and begging would not make it so. "Your son does," she said quietly. Then she turned and walked out of his office, leaving the pie behind. The door closed with a soft click that somehow felt louder than a slam would have been. Cade sat alone in the gathering dusk. The pie cooled on his desk. He did not touch it, but he could not stop thinking about her words. "Your son does." How did she know about Sam? How did she know about the sickness that was slowly stealing away the only thing Cade had left to love in this world? He pushed the thought away and reached for the bottle of whiskey in his bottom drawer. Some questions were better left unasked. Outside, the September wind carried the first hint of autumn cold. It would be winter soon, and winter in Colorado territory was no place for a woman alone with nowhere to go. But that was not his problem. 2 weeks earlier, the stagecoach arrived in Silverbrook on a Tuesday afternoon, covered in dust from the long journey through the mountains. Ruth Harper stepped down onto the wooden sidewalk with one small carpet bag in her hand and $47 hidden in a pocket sewn into her petticoat. Everything she owned in the world. The driver tossed her trunk down without ceremony. It landed with a thud that made several passers-by turn and stare. Ruth picked it up herself, ignoring the looks. She had learned in St. Louis that waiting for help that would never come was worse than doing things yourself. Silverbrook was smaller than she had hoped. One main street with false-fronted buildings trying to look more substantial than they were. A hotel, a general store, a bank, a church with a white steeple that needed paint. The kind of town where everyone knew everyone else's business by sundown. Ruth found the boarding house 3 blocks off the main street. Mrs. O'Brien, the proprietress, was a thin woman with kind eyes and worried hands that never stopped moving. She showed Ruth to a small room on the 2nd floor. Clean sheets, a narrow bed, a washstand, a window that looked out over an alley. $12 a month, Mrs. O'Brien said. Includes breakfast. Supper is extra if you want it. Ruth counted out the money. That left her with $35, enough for 2 months if she was careful, 3 if she ate very little. "I am looking for work," Ruth said. "Do you know anyone who might need help?" Mrs. O'Brien's face softened with sympathy. "What kind of work can you do, dear?" "I can cook, bake, clean, sew. I can keep accounts. I can read and write in English and German." "That is quite a list." Mrs. O'Brien twisted her apron. "But I should tell you, dear, this is a small town. People talk. If you have troubles in your past, they will find out." Ruth met her eyes. "I have troubles, but none that I am ashamed of." It was mostly true. The next morning Ruth began her search. She walked to every business on Main Street. The cafe turned her away after one look. Too heavy for waiting tables, they said, though they phrased it more politely. The hotel had no positions. The milliner needed no help. At the general store, a small Chinese woman with gentle eyes looked like she wanted to say yes, but shook her head instead. "I am sorry," Miss Emma Chin said, her English precise but accented. "I would like to hire you, but Mrs. Blackwood already. She makes things difficult for me. I cannot afford more trouble." Ruth understood. She had seen the way people looked at Miss Emma, the same way they looked at her. Outsiders, different, not quite acceptable. By the end of the week, Ruth had been rejected by every establishment in town. Her money was dwindling. She began skipping meals, telling herself it was good practice for the hunger that might come. It was on Sunday that she made her first real mistake. She went to church. The Silverbrook Community Church stood at the north end of town, its white paint gleaming in the morning sun. Ruth wore her best dress, dark blue, with a white collar she had carefully pressed. She carried her mother's Bible, the only thing of value she still owned. She arrived early and took a seat in the very last pew in the corner, the kind of seat where a person could slip out quickly if needed. She had learned that lesson too. The church filled slowly. Families clustered together. Women in their Sunday best whispered behind gloved hands. Children squirmed in starched collars. And at the front in the first pew on the right sat Mrs. Evelyn Blackwood. She was everything Ruth was not. Slender, elegant, dressed in dove-gray silk that probably cost more than Ruth had earned in a year back when she still had a life. Her hair was perfectly arranged beneath a small hat with real ostrich feathers. Her husband sat beside her, portly and prosperous, the town's banker. They looked like a portrait of respectable success. Mrs. Blackwood turned and surveyed the congregation with the air of a general inspecting troops. Her gaze swept over Ruth, paused, narrowed slightly. Then she turned back to face the pulpit. But Ruth saw her lean toward the woman beside her and whisper something. The service began. Reverend Morrison was an earnest young man with a thin voice that carried poorly in the high-ceilinged room. He preached about welcoming strangers and showing Christian charity. Ruth wondered if he knew how hollow those words would sound before the day was over. After the final hymn, Reverend Morrison stood at the door and shook hands with his departing flock. When Ruth reached him, he took her hand warmly. "Welcome, sister. I do not believe we have met." "Ruth Harper. I arrived last week." "Ah, wonderful. We are always glad to welcome newcomers to our community." He pitched his voice louder, clearly intending others to hear. "This is Mrs. Harper, everyone. She is new to Silverbrook and seeking Christian fellowship and, I believe, employment." The words hung in the air. Christian fellowship. It was meant kindly, but Ruth heard the subtext. This woman needs charity. This woman is desperate. Mrs. Blackwood approached with the smooth grace of a woman who had never doubted her welcome anywhere. She looked Ruth up and down with eyes that catalogued everything and found it all wanting. "Mrs. Harper," she said. The title was an accusation. "How interesting. And where are you from originally?" "St. Louis." "St. Louis? Such a long way. And what brings you to our little town?" "I am seeking a fresh start." "I see." Mrs. Blackwood's smile did not reach her eyes. "Well, we are a close community here, Mrs. Harper. We look after our own. But we are also careful about who we allow into our circle. I am sure you understand. We have children to think of, standards to maintain." The other women had gathered now, drawn by the scent of confrontation, the way sharks smell blood in water. They stood in a semicircle, their faces carefully neutral, waiting to see which way the wind would blow. "I understand perfectly," Ruth said quietly. She did. She had understood the moment Mrs. Blackwood looked at her. "Good." Mrs. Blackwood's smile widened. "Now, ladies, shall we adjourn to my home for tea? I have the most delightful cakes from Denver." The invitation was issued to the group. Every woman was included, every woman except Ruth. They filed out together, a river of rustling skirts and knowing glances. Ruth stood alone in the church doorway and watched them go. She could have cried. She could have raged. She could have shouted that she had done nothing wrong, that she was being judged for crimes she never committed. Instead, she lifted her chin and walked back to her boarding house with steady steps. Dignity was all she had left. She would not surrender it for anyone. But someone had witnessed the entire scene. Cade Mercer stood in the shadow of the church's side entrance, waiting for his son to finish Sunday school in the basement. He had seen Ruth arrive alone, seen her take the corner seat, seen the way Evelyn Blackwood orchestrated her public humiliation with the precision of a military campaign. He told himself it was none of his business. The social wars of church ladies had nothing to do with him. He had learned long ago to keep his head down and his opinions to himself. But something about the way Ruth walked away, back straight and head high, stuck with him. He knew that walk. He had walked that way himself 3 years ago when people whispered about whether he should have done more to save his wife, when they questioned his judgment in not taking her to Denver sooner. He knew what it cost to maintain dignity when the world was determined to strip it away. Sam appeared then, clutching a paper with a Bible verse copied in crooked letters. 7 years old and far too serious for his age. The boy who used to laugh at everything now rarely smiled. "Can we go home, Papa?" Cade took his son's small hand. "Yes, son. Let us go home." As they walked to the wagon, Cade found himself thinking about the woman in the last pew, wondering where she would go, what she would do, whether anyone in this town would give her a chance. Then he pushed the thoughts away. He had his own troubles, his own pain, his own son to worry about. 3 days later that resolution crumbled. It was Wednesday afternoon. The town square was busy with people doing their midweek shopping. Cade had brought Sam into town for supplies and to see Doc Wilson about the boy's persistent stomach troubles. They were walking past the general store when Sam suddenly stopped, swayed, and collapsed. Cade caught him before he hit the ground. The boy's face was white, his breathing shallow. A crowd gathered instantly, the way crowds always do when disaster strikes. "Get Doc Wilson," Cade shouted. Someone ran. Cade gathered his son in his arms, feeling how light the boy had become, how fragile. When had Sam gotten so thin? When had Cade stopped noticing Doc Wilson's office was only a block away? Cade carried Sam there at a run, the crowd parting before him. The doctor's office smelled of carbolic and old books. Doc Wilson was 65, silver-haired, with hands that trembled slightly, but eyes that missed nothing. He examined Sam quickly, efficiently, pressed on the boy's abdomen, watched him wince, took his pulse, checked his eyes. "Same as always, Cade," he said finally. "His stomach cannot handle anything. Whatever he eats just makes him sicker. He is fading." Cade's hands clenched into fists. "There has to be something. I have tried everything I know. Milk diets, bland foods, tonics. Nothing works." Doc Wilson's voice was heavy with defeat. "I am sorry, but unless we find something that his system can tolerate, I do not know how much longer." He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Cade sat beside the examining table, holding his son's hand, feeling the fragile bones beneath the skin. This was his fault. He should have taken better care, should have tried harder, should have been a better father. "May I see him?" The voice came from the doorway. Cade looked up. Ruth Harper stood there, a basket over her arm. She must have been at the general store, must have seen the commotion. She looked at Sam with an expression Cade could not quite read. Concern, yes, but also recognition, as if she knew exactly what she was seeing. "You a doctor?" Cade's voice came out harsher than he intended. "No." Ruth stepped into the room uninvited. "But my mother saved 3 children with digestive illness in our German community, children the doctors had given up on." "Snake oil," Cade said flatly. "No. Science. Specific combinations of foods, certain preparations that aid digestion instead of hindering it." She looked at Doc Wilson. "Have you tried a diet of bone broth, rice water, and fermented cabbage juice?" Doc Wilson blinked. "Fermented cabbage juice. It is used in Germany for centuries, for people whose stomachs cannot process regular food. My mother learned it from her grandmother." Ruth turned to Cade. "I could try, if you would let me." Cade wanted to refuse. wanted to tell her to leave to take her folk remedies and her presumption somewhere else. But Sam whispered something so quietly, Cade almost missed it. "She smells like Mama." Cade froze. Ruth did smell of cinnamon and vanilla, the same spices his wife had always worn. It was probably coincidence. Probably meant nothing, but Sam had not mentioned his mother in months, had not wanted to talk about her, to remember her. And now he was looking at this stranger with something in his eyes that Cade had not seen in a long time. Hope. "No," Cade said. "We will find another way." He gathered Sam and carried him out to the wagon, refusing to look back at Ruth's face, refusing to think about the disappointment he had seen there. That night Cade could not sleep. He sat in his office with a bottle of whiskey and a photograph of his wife, Sarah. Dead 3 years this October, gone before he could save her, before he could make things right. He had failed her. He would not fail Sam. But what if he already was? The question haunted him through the dark hours. By dawn, he had made a decision he knew he would regret, but could not avoid. He rode to town as the sun rose over the mountains, painting the peaks gold and crimson. The boarding house was quiet. Mrs. O'Brien answered his knock, and her robe eyes wide with surprise. "Mr. Mercer, is everything all right? I need to speak with Mrs. Harper, Mrs." O'Brien's eyebrows rose nearly to her hairline. "At this hour, sir, I am not sure that is quite proper. It is about my son." That changed everything. Mrs. O'Brien's face softened. "Of course. Let me fetch her." Ruth appeared a few minutes later, dressed but clearly just woken. Her hair was in a simple braid over one shoulder. Without the armor of her Sunday best, she looked younger, more vulnerable. "Mr. Mercer?" "I need a cook," Cade said without preamble. "Trial period, 1 month, $30. Ruth studied him for a long moment. "I cook for your son, not for you, and I need the kitchen after hours for my own baking." "Agreed. When do I start?" "Now." Mrs. O'Brien made a sound of protest. "Mr. Mercer, people will talk." Cade turned to look at her. "Let them talk." He waited while Ruth packed her few belongings into her carpet bag and trunk. When she came downstairs, he carried the trunk to his wagon without comment. They rode back to the ranch in silence, the morning sun climbing higher with each mile. Thunder Creek Ranch spread across a valley between 2 mountain ridges. Good grazing land, a reliable stream timber for building. Cade had built it from nothing over 15 years. It was worth something now, worth enough that men respected him even if they did not always like him. The main house was 2 stories, solid pine logs, chinked with mud and moss. There were corrals, a barn, a bunkhouse for the ranch hands. Ruth's cabin would be a small structure near the main house built originally for a foreman who never materialized. Jake Patterson met them in the yard. He was 45, weathered and wiry, Cade's most trusted hand. His eyes widened when he saw Ruth climb down from the wagon. "Boss, you sure about this?" 1 month, Cade said. "If Sam improves, she stays." Jake's skepticism was written all over his face, but he knew better than to argue. "Yes, sir." Cade showed Ruth to her cabin. It was spare but clean. A bed, a chair, a small stove. A window that looked toward the mountains. "I will bring your meals to the main house," Cade said. "Kitchen is through the back door. Sam's room is upstairs, second on the right. Do not go in without my permission." "Understood. One more thing." Cade turned to face her fully. "I do not care what people say you did in St. Louis. I do not care about your past. But if you hurt my son in any way, I will put you on the first stage out of here myself. Are we clear?" Ruth met his eyes steadily. "Crystal clear, Mr. Mercer." "Good." He left her to settle in and went to find Sam. The boy was in the kitchen with Jake picking at a piece of toast he could not eat. When Cade told him about Ruth, Sam's reaction surprised him. "Is she going to try to be my new mama?" "No, she is the cook. That is all." Sam considered this. "Okay." That afternoon, Ruth took over the kitchen with the efficiency of a general conquering territory. She inventoried every shelf, every barrel, every jar. She cleaned surfaces that were already clean. She organized supplies with a system that made perfect sense once you saw it in action. Cade watched from the doorway and felt something he had not felt in years. The house felt lived in again. Not just occupied, but lived in. There was a difference, and he had not realized how much he missed it until now. For the first meal, Ruth made something simple. Chicken soup with tiny noodles, fresh bread still warm, apple compote sweetened with honey. She set the table in the dining room that Cade had not used since Sarah died, laying out plates and napkins as if this were a normal family dinner. Cade and Sam sat down across from each other. Ruth served them and then retreated to the kitchen. "She is not eating with us," Sam asked. "She is the help. She eats in the kitchen." Sam frowned but said nothing. He picked up his spoon and tried the soup. His eyes widened. "Papa, this is good. Eat slowly." Sam obeyed, taking small sips of broth. For the first time in weeks he finished an entire bowl. Then he ate half a slice of bread. When he was done, he looked at his father with surprise. "My stomach does not hurt." Cade felt something tight in his chest loosen slightly. Good. That night Sam slept without waking once. Cade checked on him twice, standing in the doorway of the boy's room, watching the steady rise and fall of his breathing. In the morning Sam actually asked for breakfast. It was only the first day. Too soon to hope. But Cade found himself hoping anyway. The first week passed in careful routine. Ruth cooked 3 meals a day, each one precisely calibrated to Sam's delicate system. Bone broth, rice porridge, steamed vegetables, gentle nourishing food that did not overtax a struggling stomach. And Sam began to improve. Not dramatically, not overnight. But day by day he ate a little more, kept it down a little better, gained back a little color in his pale cheeks. By the 5th day, Jake Patterson's skepticism had transformed into grudging respect. "I do not know what she is doing," he told Cade, "but whatever it is working." Ruth also kept her bargain about using the kitchen after hours. Every night after dinner was cleaned up and Sam was in bed, she would return to the kitchen and bake. The smells that drifted through the house were extraordinary: cinnamon and nutmeg, vanilla and almond, yeast and butter. Cade found himself inventing excuses to walk past the kitchen at night, to see what she was making, to watch her work with the quiet competence of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. She made strudels and tarts, cookies and cakes, breads both sweet and savory. She made things Cade had never seen before, recipes from her mother's German heritage. And every morning she would pack them into baskets and walk into town to sell them, or try to sell them. Mrs. Blackwood's campaign had been effective. No one would buy from Ruth Harper. Miss Emma Chen wanted to, but could not risk the social consequences. The hotel manager turned her away at the door. The cafe owner looked at her goods with longing, but shook his head. Ruth came back each day with full baskets and empty pockets, but she never complained, never showed defeat. She simply went back to the kitchen and baked again. On Sunday the test came. Cade did not attend church regularly, but he went often enough to maintain appearances. That morning he and Sam arrived to find the usual crowd gathering on the steps. And there in the center of attention, like a queen holding court, was Evelyn Blackwood. She saw Cade, and her face lit with false warmth. "Mr. Mercer, how delightful to see you. And young Sam. My dear boy, are you feeling better? We heard you had another spell." "He is fine," Cade said shortly. "Oh, I am so glad." She lowered her voice conspiratorially. "We heard you hired that Harper woman as your cook. Is that true?" The other women leaned in, avid for scandal. "It is." "Oh, my." Mrs. Blackwood pressed a hand to her chest. "Mr. Mercer, I feel I must tell you, as a concerned member of this community, that woman has a past, a very questionable past. Do tell." Cade's voice was ice. Mrs. Blackwood missed the warning entirely. Her husband died in St. Louis, under very suspicious circumstances, a fire, they say, and she fled town immediately after. There were questions about insurance money, about her possible involvement. She paused for dramatic effect. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. "Where did you hear this?" Cade asked quietly. "I have connections in St. Louis. I made inquiries as any responsible person would." She smiled triumphantly. "I simply thought you should know. Before you allow such a person around your impressionable son." Cade looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at the other women gathered around her. Their faces showed eagerness, righteousness, the peculiar satisfaction that comes from finding someone else to look down upon. He thought about Ruth alone in her cabin, banned from church, because these people had judged her without trial. "Mrs. Blackwood," he said clearly, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Ruth Harper works for me. Any man has a problem with that, he can take it up with me directly. Any woman has a problem with it, I suggest she find better things to do than spread gossip." Mrs. Blackwood's face flushed. "Mr. Mercer, I am only trying to help." "I did not ask for your help. I do not want your help. And I will thank you to keep your opinions about my household to yourself." He took Sam's hand and walked into the church, leaving shocked silence in his wake. After the service, when he came back out, 3 ranch hands from a neighboring spread were waiting. Cade recognized them. Good men mostly, but followers the type who took their cues from the herd. The leader stepped forward. "Mercer, we need to talk." "Talk." "This woman you hired. People are saying she is not right, that she might be dangerous. We got kids in this town. We got to think about their safety." Cade did not move. "Are you threatening me?" "No, sir, just saying. A man's got to be careful who he lets around his family." "I appreciate your concern," Cade said flatly. "Now get out of my way." The men shifted uncertain. They outnumbered him 3-1. But Cade had a reputation. A fair man, but not one to cross. His eyes promised that if they pushed this, they would regret it. The leader backed down. "Just wanted to make sure you knew." "I know. Now I am asking you politely to step aside." They did. Cade and Sam walked to their wagon in silence. But Cade knew the damage was done. He had publicly aligned himself with an outcast. In a town like Silverbrook, that made him an outcast, too. Sam looked up at him. "Papa, why are people so mean?" Cade did not have a good answer. "Because they are scared, son, and scared people do ugly things." That night, after Sam was asleep, Cade could not settle. He paced his office, poured whiskey he did not drink, stared at ledgers he could not focus on. Finally, he admitted defeat and went downstairs. The kitchen was warm and bright. Ruth stood at the work table kneading dough with practiced hands. She looked up when he entered, but did not stop working. "Could not sleep?" she asked. "No." Cade poured himself coffee from the pot on the stove. "You either?" "I sleep better when I work." They stood in silence for a moment. Cade watched her hands move strong and sure, pressing and folding the dough. There was something hypnotic about it, something peaceful. "They are going to make this difficult for you," Ruth said quietly. "Mrs. Blackwood and her friends. It would be easier if you let me go." "Easier for who?" "For you, for Sam." Cade set down his coffee cup. "Sam is eating, sleeping, getting stronger every day. That is what matters. And when they ostracize you, when they stop doing business with you, then they stop. I have survived worse." Ruth looked at him, then really looked at him. "Why did you hire me, Mr. Mercer, and do not tell me it was just for Sam?" Cade considered lying, considered deflecting, but something about the late hour, the quiet kitchen, made honesty easier. "I saw what they did to you, at church, the way they treated you." He paused. "I know what that feels like." "When your wife died?" It was not a question. Cade nodded. "They said you should have taken her to Denver sooner, that you waited too long." "They were right." "Were they?" Ruth's voice was gentle. "Or were they just people looking for someone to blame?" Cade had no answer for that. Ruth went back to her dough. "My husband did die in a fire. It was an accident. A lamp tipped over in his study. I tried to save him. I have the scars to prove it." She held up her right arm, showing the angry red marks that ran from wrist to elbow. His family accused me of starting the fire for the insurance money. They filed a civil suit. They had connections, money, influence. I had nothing. So I ran. Why tell me this? Because you asked me to be honest about my past. This is the truth, all of it. If you want me to leave now, I understand. Cade studied her, looking for deception, for the signs his wife had always said he was too trusting to see. But all he saw was exhaustion and truth. I believe you, he said. Ruth's hand stilled on the dough. Why? Because Sam is alive, and anyone who could save my son is not a murderer. For a moment Ruth's composure cracked. Her eyes filled with tears she did not let fall. She turned away quickly, but not before Cade saw. He did not know what to do, did not know how to comfort someone who clearly did not want comfort. So he stood there useless and awkward until Ruth spoke again. Thank you, she said quietly, for believing me. It has been a long time since anyone did. Cade wanted to say something profound, something that would take away the pain he heard in her voice. Instead, he offered her his handkerchief. She took it with a small, watery laugh. You do not have to do that. I know. She wiped her eyes and handed it back. Their fingers brushed, just for a moment. Just long enough for Cade to notice that her hands were warm from the dough dusted with flour, long enough to feel something he had not felt in 3 years. He stepped back quickly. I should let you work. Yes, I suppose you should. Cade left the kitchen and climbed the stairs to his empty bedroom. But he could still smell cinnamon and vanilla on his handkerchief, and when he finally slept, he dreamed of warm kitchens and steady hands. The next morning, Doc Wilson came to check on Sam. He examined the boy thoroughly, weighing him, checking his color, listening to his breathing. Remarkable, he said finally. I would not have believed it if I had not seen it with my own eyes. He is better. Cade tried to keep the hope out of his voice. Much better. He has gained 3 pounds in 2 weeks. His color is good. His stomach is tolerating food. Whatever Mrs. Harper is doing, you need to keep her doing it. After Doc Wilson left, Cade went looking for Ruth. He found her in the garden behind the house, showing Sam how to identify herbs. This one is chamomile, she was saying, good for stomach aches and helping you sleep. And this is mint. You can chew the leaves when you feel sick. Sam was crouched beside her, completely absorbed. His small hands touched the plants gently as if they were precious things. Does it work like medicine? He asked. Better than medicine. These are what God gave us before there were doctors. Sam looked up at her with absolute trust. Did your mama teach you this? Yes. She said a woman who can grow her own medicine never has to be afraid. Was she scared a lot? Ruth paused. When she answered, her voice was soft. Sometimes. We all are sometimes. But being scared is not the same as giving up. Cade cleared his throat. They both looked up startled. Papa? Miss Ruth is teaching me about plants. I see that. Ruth stood brushing dirt from her skirt. I hope you do not mind. He seemed interested. I do not mind. Cade hesitated. Doc Wilson says Sam is much improved. A smile lit Ruth's plain face, transforming it. That is wonderful news. It is because of you. It is because of him. He is stronger than he knows. Sam beamed. Then without warning he threw his arms around Ruth's waist. Thank you, Miss Ruth. Ruth froze. Cade could see the struggle on her face, the desire to return the embrace warring with the knowledge that she should not, could not, must not become too attached to this child who was not hers. Finally, gently, she put her hands on Sam's shoulders. You are welcome, Sam. But you should thank your papa. He is the one who let me help. Sam released her and ran to Cade. Papa, did you hear I am getting better? I heard, son. That night at dinner, Sam was actually hungry. He ate chicken and vegetables and even a small piece of bread with butter. Real food, normal food, the kind of meal a healthy child should eat. And for the first time in months he asked for seconds. Cade saw Ruth in the kitchen doorway watching. Their eyes met across the dining room. No words passed between them, but Cade saw the same thing in her face that he felt in his chest. Pride, relief. And something more dangerous: hope. The third week brought new routines. Sam started helping Ruth in the kitchen in the mornings, learning to measure flour and crack eggs. Ruth taught him German words for ingredients, turning cooking into a game. The boy thrived on it. Jake Patterson noticed the change too. He sought out Cade one afternoon while they were mending fence. "Boss, I got to say it, that woman is good for the boy." "I know. More than good. I have not seen Sam smile like that since Miss Sarah passed." Cade hammered in a nail harder than necessary. "Your point." "No point, just an observation." Jake was quiet for a moment. "She is good for you too, I reckon." "Jake?" All right. I will shut up." But he grinned as he said it. That Sunday Cade made a decision. He was not going to church. If the town wanted to judge him, let them. He would not subject Sam to their whispers and stares. Instead, he invited Ruth to join them for a proper Sunday dinner. She hesitated at first. "Mr. Mercer, I am the help. It would not be appropriate." "You eat in the kitchen every night. One meal with us will not scandalize anyone who is not already scandalized." "But Sam has been asking why you do not eat with us. I am tired of not having a good answer." So Ruth set 3 places at the table. She made roast chicken and root vegetables, fresh bread and cherry pie. They sat down together like a family. Sam chattered through the meal, telling stories about the ranch hands and the new calf in the barn. Ruth listened with patient attention, asking questions, laughing at his jokes. Cade watched them and felt something shift in his chest. This was what he had lost when Sarah died. Not just a wife, but this: the warmth of family, the sound of laughter, the simple pleasure of sharing a meal with people you cared about. After dinner, Sam asked if he could be excused to play with his wooden horses. Cade nodded. The boy ran off, leaving Cade and Ruth alone at the table. "He is a good child," Ruth said. "You should be proud." "I am, though I cannot take much credit. Sarah did most of the raising before she passed. You can say it, Mr. Mercer. Death is not a forbidden word." Cade looked at her. "You lost your husband. How do you talk about it so easily?" "Easily." Ruth smiled without humor. "There is nothing easy about it, but I learned that if I could not say the words out loud, they would eat me alive from the inside." "And do they eat you alive?" "Some days." She was quiet for a moment. "Other days I remember that I survived. That survival is its own kind of victory." Cade wanted to ask more, wanted to know her story, all of it, every detail. But the moment felt too fragile, so instead he asked a different question. "Why did you come to Silverbrook? Of all the places you could have gone, why here?" Ruth considered. "It was far enough, small enough that I thought I could disappear. I did not count on Mrs. Blackwood being quite so thorough in her investigations." "She is a terror." "She is frightened." Cade blinked. "Frightened of losing control, of the town changing, of people like me coming in and disrupting the order she has spent years establishing." Ruth traced a pattern on the tablecloth. "I almost pity her." "You are kinder than I am." "No, just more experienced with being the outsider." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then, without thinking, Cade reached across the table. His hand covered hers. Ruth looked down at their joined hands, then up at his face. "Mr. Mercer." "Cade. My name is Cade." "Cade." She tried it out. "You should not." "I know. I am sorry." But he did not pull his hand away. "I just wanted you to know. You are not alone anymore." Ruth's eyes filled with tears for the second time since she had arrived. "You barely know me." "I know enough." She pulled her hand back gently. "You know what you want to know, what you need to believe. But there is more to my story. Pieces I have not told you." "Then tell me." "Not yet. Not until I am sure you are ready to hear them." Before Cade could respond, Sam called from the other room. "Papa can. Miss Ruth read me a story." The moment broke. Ruth stood smoothing her skirt. "I should go." "Ruth." She paused at the door. Whatever those pieces are, they will not change what I see when I look at you. You cannot promise that. No, I suppose I cannot, but I can promise I will listen." Ruth looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled, small but genuine. "That is more than most men would offer." She went to read to Sam, leaving Cade alone with his thoughts and the ghost of warmth where her hand had been. That night, as Cade lay in bed, he admitted something to himself that he had been avoiding for weeks. He was beginning to care for Ruth Harper. Not just appreciate her skill or be grateful for her help with Sam. Actually care. The way a man cares for a woman. It terrified him. Sarah had been his whole world. When she died, he thought that part of him died too. The part that could love. The part that could hope. But Ruth was bringing it back to life, and he did not know if he was ready for that. In her cabin, Ruth lay awake too. She thought about Cade's hand on hers, about the way he looked at her sometimes when he thought she was not paying attention. She wanted to believe it could mean something, but she knew better. Men like Cade Mercer did not choose women like her, not when they had options, not when they were good men who could have anyone. He was being kind, grateful, nothing more. And when the truth came out, when he learned the full story of what happened in St. Louis, he would understand why she could never be anything more than his cook. She pulled the quilt up to her chin and told herself she was grateful for what she had. A job, a roof, a chance to help a child who needed her. Asking for more would be greedy. But sometimes in the dark hours before dawn, she let herself imagine what more might feel like. And it felt like Cade's hand covering hers, like Sam calling her name, like belonging somewhere after years of running. It felt like home, and that she knew was the most dangerous feeling of all. The fourth week brought a fragile peace. Ruth's position at the ranch seemed secure. Sam continued to thrive under her care. The town's hostility had not lessened, but it had become predictable, manageable. Cade found himself beginning to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, they had outrun Ruth's past. He should have known better. The stranger rode into Silverbrook on a Tuesday morning 4 weeks after Ruth Harper had arrived at Thunder Creek Ranch. He came alone, sitting tall in the saddle on a black gelding that looked too fine for a working man. His coat was city-made, his boots polished, and on his chest, catching the autumn sunlight, was a deputy marshal's badge. Harrison Cole was 42 years old and handsome in the way that certain men are handsome. Sharp features, dark hair graying at the temples, eyes that seemed warm until you looked closely and saw the calculation behind them. He had the bearing of authority and the smile of a snake oil salesman. He rode straight to the sheriff's office and tied his horse to the rail. Sheriff Tom Garrett was inside, going through wanted posters with the enthusiasm of a man doing a job he never wanted. He looked up when Cole entered, and his face went carefully neutral. "Can I help you?" Cole pulled out a folded paper from his coat. "I am looking for a woman, Ruth Harper. I have reason to believe she is in this area." Garrett took the paper. It was a warrant official looking with seals and signatures. Civil matter, it said. Recovery of property. Unlawful flight. What did she do? Stole from her late husband's estate. $50,000 in bearer bonds and jewelry. The family wants it back. Cole's voice was smooth, reasonable. "I am authorized to take her into custody and return her to St. Louis for civil proceedings." Garrett studied the warrant. Something about it felt wrong, but he could not put his finger on what. "This is a civil matter. Why a marshal?" "The family has connections. They want this handled properly." Cole leaned against the desk, casual and confident. "Now, have you seen her or not?" "Might have. What does she look like?" Cole described Ruth perfectly. Too perfectly. Down to the scar on her right arm and the plain brown carpet bag she carried. Garrett felt his stomach sink. He knew exactly where Ruth Harper was, and he had a bad feeling about what would happen when this man found her. "She is working out at the Mercer Ranch," he said finally. "Cook and housekeeper." Cole's eyes lit with satisfaction. "The Mercer Ranch? And how do I get there?" Garrett gave him directions, hating himself for it. But what choice did he have? The warrant was legal. The man had authority. and Garrett was just a small-town sheriff who knew better than to stick his neck out for people he barely knew. After Cole left, Garrett sat alone in his office and tried to tell himself he had done the right thing. But his hands shook as he poured himself a drink, and the whiskey tasted like cowardice. At Thunder Creek Ranch, the morning had started like any other. Ruth was in the kitchen making breakfast while Sam helped her set the table. The boy had gained weight, filled out, started looking like a healthy child again instead of a fragile ghost. He chattered constantly now, making up for months of silence. "Miss Ruth, can we make cookies today? The kind with the jam in the middle." "We will see. First, you need to finish your arithmetic lessons with your father." "But arithmetic is boring." "So is starving because you cannot count your money." Ruth smiled at him. "Your mother would want you to learn." The mention of Sarah no longer brought the sharp pain it once had. Sam talked about his mother now with the gentle sadness of acceptance rather than the raw grief of fresh loss. Cade came in from the barn stamping mud from his boots. He had been up since before dawn checking on a pregnant mare. There were shadows under his eyes, but his face softened when he saw Sam and Ruth together. "Breakfast ready?" "Almost. Wash your hands." It was domestic and ordinary, the kind of moment that would have seemed impossible a month ago. Cade washed at the pump. Sam brought plates to the table. Ruth dished up eggs and biscuits and sausage gravy. They sat together. They ate. They talked about the day ahead. And then the knock came at the door. Cade answered it. A stranger stood on his porch badge, gleaming warrant in hand. "Cade Mercer, I am Deputy Marshal Harrison Cole. I am looking for a woman named Ruth Harper. I believe she works for you." Cade's face went still. "What do you want with her?" "That is between me and Mrs. Harper. Is she here?" "Who is asking for me?" Ruth had appeared in the doorway between the kitchen and the front hall. She saw Cole, and the color drained from her face. She knew. Somehow she knew exactly who he was and why he had come. Cole smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Mrs. Harper, we have been looking for you for quite some time." "I have done nothing wrong." "That is for a court to decide." Cole held up the warrant. "You are wanted in St. Louis for theft and unlawful flight. I am authorized to take you into custody." "No." Cade stepped between them. "You are not taking her anywhere." Cole's smile widened. "Mr. Mercer, I appreciate your concern. But this is a legal matter. You can interfere and face charges yourself, or you can step aside and let me do my job." "Let me see that warrant." Cole handed it over. Cade read it carefully, looking for any flaw, any loophole. But it looked legitimate. Official seals, proper signatures, a judge's stamp. "This is a civil warrant. You cannot arrest her on civil charges. I can take her into custody pending civil proceedings. It is all quite legal, I assure you." Ruth touched Cade's arm. "It is all right." "No, it is not all right." Cade turned to her. "You said the charges were false." "They are, but that does not mean they do not have power." Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. "I will go with him. I will face this properly." "Ruth, please, I do not want you to get hurt because of me." Cole pulled out handcuffs. "If we are all agreed, Mrs. Harper, if you would come with me." Sam appeared then, running from the kitchen. "Papa? What is happening? Why is that man here?" "Go back to the kitchen, son." "But Miss Ruth—" "Now, Sam." The boy fled. Cade heard him crying in the other room, and something in his chest cracked. He had promised Sam things would be better. He had promised Ruth she was safe here. He had promised himself he would not fail again. "Give me 24 hours, Cade said to Cole. "Let me ride into town and talk to a lawyer. If the warrant is legitimate, I will bring her to you myself tomorrow." Cole considered. "You will be harboring a fugitive. Civil fugitive, not criminal. And I am not harboring anyone. I am asking for time to verify the legal process is being followed correctly." Cade's voice was ice. "Unless you have something to hide." It was a gamble, but Cole was smart enough to know that dragging Ruth out by force would turn public opinion against him. Better to seem reasonable, cooperative. 24 hours. But if she runs, Mr. Mercer, I will hold you responsible. She will not run. Cole tipped his hat to Ruth. Until tomorrow, Mrs. Harper. He left. The sound of his horse's hooves faded down the drive. Cade and Ruth stood in the sudden silence, not looking at each other. You should not have done that, Ruth said finally. Probably not. He will come back, and when he does, I will have to go. Maybe, but not before I understand what is really happening. Cade turned to face her. Is any of what he said true? Did you take money from your husband's estate? Ruth met his eyes. I took what was mine. My husband left everything to me in his will, but his family contested it. They said I was an unfit heir, that I had manipulated him. They froze the estate in probate and filed suit. She paused. Before I left St. Louis, I took $3,000 in cash that was in our safe. Money I had earned from selling my baked goods. My money. But they claimed it was part of the estate. That is theft, according to them, according to their lawyers, according to a judge they had in their pocket. Cade believed her. He did not know why, could not explain the certainty, but he believed every word. I am riding to Denver, he said. There is a lawyer there who owes me a favor. He can tell me if this warrant is legitimate or if Cole is running a game, and if it is legitimate, then we figure out our next move. Cade, Ruth's voice broke slightly. You cannot fix this. Some things are too broken. Watch me try. He called Jake Patterson and gave him quick instructions. Watch the ranch. Watch Sam. Watch Ruth. If Cole came back before Cade returned, Jake was to stall him any way he could. Then Cade saddled his fastest horse and rode for Denver. He pushed hard, changing horses twice at stations along the way. He reached Denver as the sun was setting and went straight to the office of Marcus Webb, attorney at law. Webb was 60, silver-haired, with the sharp eyes of a man who had seen every trick in the book and invented a few of his own. He owed Cade a debt from 5 years back when Cade had testified in a land dispute case that saved one of Webb's clients from ruin. Mercer, this is a surprise. I need your help. Legal trouble. Webb poured them both whiskey and listened while Cade explained. When Cade finished, Webb held out his hand for the warrant. He read it slowly, thoroughly. Then he read it again. Finally, he set it down and looked at Cade with an expression that was half admiration, half disgust. This is a masterpiece of legal manipulation. Explain. The warrant itself is legitimate. A judge in St. Louis did sign this. But look at the date, 3 years old. It was issued during the probate fight before the estate was settled. Webb tapped the paper. The estate case was resolved 18 months ago. The will was upheld. Mrs. Harper was ruled the lawful heir. This warrant should have been vacated. Should have been. Someone made sure it was not. Someone with enough pull to keep it active in the system, even though the underlying case is closed. Webb leaned back. Your Marshal Cole is working for the family, and they are willing to bend every rule to get their money back. Can we fight it? In St. Louis number here in Colorado, maybe. We can file for a writ of habeas corpus, challenge the warrant's validity, argue that it is being enforced in bad faith. Webb paused. But that takes time, weeks, maybe months, and in the meantime, they can hold her. Cade felt rage building in his chest. So she is trapped. Unless, Webb smiled slowly, unless we can prove the warrant was obtained through fraud, that would invalidate it immediately. How do we prove that? We would need evidence, documents, testimony, something that shows the family knew the estate case was settled and deliberately kept the warrant active anyway. Where would we get that, Chief? St. Louis. You would need someone on the ground there, someone who knows how to dig through court records and ask the right questions. Cade thought fast. How long would that take? If you had the right person, 2 weeks, maybe less. And in the meantime, Mrs. Harper stays put, does not run, does not give them any excuse to claim she is fleeing justice. Webb refilled their glasses. Can she do that? Can she stay calm while this plays out? Cade thought about Ruth's steady hands and unbending spine. Yes, she can do that. Then you have a chance, a small one, but a chance. Cade rode back to Thunder Creek through the night, arriving as dawn broke over the mountains. He was exhausted, filthy, and running on fury and coffee. But he had a plan. Ruth was waiting for him on the porch. She had not slept either. He could see it in her face. Well? Cade dismounted and told her everything Webb had said. She listened without interrupting, her face growing paler with each word. 2 weeks, she said when he finished. You want me to wait here for 2 weeks while they hunt for evidence that might not exist? Yes. And what if they do not find it? What if Cole takes me back to St. Louis and I spend years fighting this in court? Then I will come to St. Louis and fight beside you. Ruth laughed, bitter and broken. You do not even know me. Not really. Why would you do this? Because it is right. Right. She shook her head. Cade, I appreciate what you are trying to do, but you need to think about Sam, about your ranch, about your life. You cannot throw all of that away for someone like me. Someone like you. Cade stepped closer. You mean someone who saved my son, someone who brought life back into this house, someone who made me remember what it feels like to hope. Cade, I am not throwing anything away. I am fighting for something worth keeping. He did not touch her, did not cross the line that still existed between employer and employee, between gratitude and something more. But the words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Ruth closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were wet with tears she refused to let fall. I cannot let you do this. You cannot stop me. Before she could respond, Sam came running out of the house. He had been awake too, listening from his window. Papa, you are back. Did you fix it? Can Miss Ruth stay? Cade knelt down to his son's level. I am working on it, son, but it might take some time. How much time? A few weeks. Sam's face crumpled. But what if the bad man takes her away? He will not. I promise. It was a promise Cade had no right to make. But looking at his son's frightened face, at Ruth's exhausted eyes, he made it anyway. Sam threw his arms around Ruth's waist. Please do not go, Miss Ruth. Please. Ruth's carefully maintained composure finally shattered. She knelt down and hugged Sam properly, fiercely, the way a mother hugs a child she loves. I am not going anywhere, she whispered. Not if I can help it. But over Sam's head her eyes met Cade's, and he saw the truth she was trying to hide. She did not believe it, did not believe they could win, did not believe she deserved to be saved. That was when Cade made his second decision. He would prove her wrong, no matter what it took. The next day, Cole returned. Cade met him at the property line, blocking the road with his horse. Mrs. Harper is staying. Cole's friendly mask slipped slightly. Mr. Mercer, we had an agreement. I consulted with a lawyer. The warrant is questionable. We are challenging it. You cannot challenge a legal warrant. Watch me. Cade did not move. You want to take her, you will need to go through me first, and then my ranch hands, and then half the men in this valley who do not take kindly to city marshals throwing their weight around. It was mostly bluff. Cade did not know if any other men would stand with him, but Cole did not know that either. Cole studied him for a long moment. Then he smiled, and this time it was genuinely amused. You are making a mistake, Mercer. Probably, but it is my mistake to make. You know what they will say. A widower defending a woman accused of murder. People will talk. Let them talk. Cole shook his head. I will be back, with reinforcements if necessary. And when I take her, and I will take her, you will have destroyed your reputation for nothing. He turned his horse and rode back toward town. But Cade knew it was not over. It was just beginning. That night, Mrs. Blackwood called an emergency meeting of the church committee. 15 women crowded into her parlor, sitting on velvet chairs and drinking tea from china cups. They whispered and speculated and thoroughly enjoyed the scandal. I told you that woman was trouble, Mrs. Blackwood announced. Her voice was controlled, but her hands gripped her teacup too tightly. And now my husband tells me that Cade Mercer has been making inquiries about our banking practices, About certain loans. The room went silent. What kind of inquiries? Someone asked carefully. The kind that could ruin us. Evelyn set down her cup with a sharp click. Mercer has always been too clever for his own good. And now that Harper woman has him asking questions we cannot afford to have answered. If he discovers the irregularities in how we've handled certain accounts. She did not finish. She did not need to. This was not just about social control anymore. This was about survival. And now a federal marshal has arrived hunting her for theft and murder. It gives us the perfect opportunity. Mrs. Blackwood's voice hardened. We are going to protect this community, starting with a petition. We will demand that the town council revoke any business licenses for Mrs. Harper. We will refuse service to anyone who supports her, and we will make it very clear that Mr. Mercer's association with this woman makes him unwelcome in polite society. What are we going to do? Someone asked. We are going to protect this community, starting with a petition. Mrs. Blackwood's eyes glittered. We will demand that the town council revoke any business licenses for Mrs. Harper. We will refuse service to anyone who supports her, and we will make it very clear that Mr. Mercer's association with this woman makes him unwelcome in polite society. Miss Emma Chin, who had been invited despite being barely tolerated, spoke up. That seems harsh, Evelyn. We do not even know if the charges are true. The marshal says they are true. That is good enough for me. Since when do we trust government officials without question? Miss Emma's voice was mild, but her eyes were sharp. I seem to remember you questioning the land office about boundaries for 5 years. Mrs. Blackwood's face flushed. That was different. Was it? Or are you simply using this as an excuse to drive out someone you have decided does not belong? The room went silent. No one spoke to Evelyn Blackwood that way. No one dared. Emma Chin, if you cannot support this community's values, perhaps you should leave. Perhaps I should. Emma stood with dignity. But before I do, let me say this. Ruth Harper has done nothing to any of you except exist. She works hard. She keeps to herself. She has helped a sick child get well, and for that you want to destroy her. She looked around the room. My people came to this country with nothing. We were told we did not belong. Some of you have ancestors who were told the same thing. And yet here you sit doing to someone else exactly what was done to you. She left. The door closed quietly behind her. Mrs. Blackwood recovered quickly. Well, that tells you everything you need to know about divided loyalties. Now who will sign the petition? Every hand went up. Word spread fast in a small town. By the next morning everyone knew about the petition, about Cole's warrant, about Cade's defiance. Cade went to town to buy supplies and found himself facing a wall of cold shoulders and averted eyes. The general store owner sold to him but did not make conversation. The blacksmith worked on his order in silence. Even Reverend Morrison, when Cade passed him on the street, could only manage a weak nod. The only person who would talk to him was Doc Wilson. You are making enemies, Cade. I know. Evelyn Blackwood is out for blood, and she has most of the town behind her. I know that too. Doc Wilson shook his head. Is it worth it for a woman you barely know? Cade thought about Ruth in his kitchen teaching Sam to knead bread. Ruth in the garden showing his son how to identify healing herbs. Ruth sitting across from him at dinner filling a silence that had been empty for too long. Yes, he said, it is worth it. Doc Wilson sighed. Then you are a braver man than most, or a more foolish one. I have not decided which. Back at the ranch, Ruth was dealing with her own crisis. Sam's stomach trouble had returned, not as severe as before, but enough to worry her. The boy had eaten something that disagreed with him, or perhaps the stress of the situation was affecting him. Either way, he was in pain. Ruth made him her special tea, the one with chamomile and ginger and a touch of honey. She held the cup to his lips and coaxed him to drink, but this time it did not help as quickly. By evening, Sam was worse. Cade came home to find Ruth sitting beside his son's bed, her face drawn with worry. How long has he been like this? Since afternoon. I have tried everything I know. Nothing is working. Cade felt the old fear return, the helpless terror of watching his child suffer and being unable to stop it. Should I get Doc Wilson? He cannot do anything I have not already done. Then what do we do? Ruth was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. There is something else. A recipe my mother used only in the most severe cases. It is powerful, dangerous if done wrong, but it works. Then do it. Cade, you do not understand. The ingredients are specific, rare. Some of them I would need to grow myself, and I have not had time to establish a proper garden here. What do you need? She told him. Some items were common enough, others would require a trip to Denver or beyond. One plant grew only in certain alpine meadows and only at certain times of year. I will find them, Cade said. Whatever you need. It could take weeks. Then we have weeks. Sam might not have weeks. Cade's hands clenched into fists. Tell me what to do. Ruth made a decision. She went to her cabin and returned with a small leather journal. It was old-worn, the pages covered in careful German script. This was my mother's, her remedies, her recipes. She opened it to a page near the middle. This one. It saved 3 children when I was young, children the doctors said would die. Cade looked at the recipe. He could not read German, but he recognized some of the Latin names for plants. How long will it take you to make this? If I had the ingredients, a few days. The fermentation process cannot be rushed. And without the ingredients, it cannot be made at all. Sam moaned in his sleep. The sound cut through Cade like a knife. There has to be another way. Ruth looked at the journal in her hands. Then she looked at Sam. Then, with visible reluctance, she made a choice. There might be, but you will not like it. Tell me. Before I left St. Louis, I made a batch of this medicine, a large batch. I brought some with me hidden in my trunk. I was saving it. In case... She trailed off. In case what? In case I needed to prove my worth. To someone who mattered. To someone who might protect me if things went bad. She met his eyes. I was going to use it as a bargaining chip, to show I had value beyond cooking and cleaning. Cade understood. She had been planning for survival, making sure she had something to trade when the world came hunting. How much do you have? Enough for maybe 6 doses. Enough to cure Sam completely if we start now. Then start now. Cade. Her voice was pained. If I use it on Sam, I have nothing left. No leverage, no proof of my skills. When Cole comes back, when this goes to court, I will have no way to demonstrate that I am anything more than a common thief. It was the truth, stark and brutal. She was asking him to choose. Sam's health or her freedom. Cade did not hesitate. Save my son. But save him. We will figure out the rest later. Ruth's eyes filled with tears. You would really choose Sam over any chance of winning my case? Every single time. She nodded once, sharp and decisive. Then she went to her cabin and returned with a small brown bottle. The medicine inside was dark, thick, aromatic. She gave Sam the first dose that night. For the first hour, nothing happened. Then Sam began to sweat. His breathing grew rapid. Ruth stayed by his bedside, monitoring every change with fierce concentration. Is this normal? Cade asked, trying to keep the fear from his voice. Yes. The medicine works by purging the toxins. It will get worse before it gets better. But her hand trembled as she pressed a cool cloth to Sam's forehead. By midnight, Sam was shaking with fever. Cade wanted to send for Doc Wilson, wanted to stop this treatment that seemed to be killing his son. But Ruth's steady confidence held him back. Trust me, she whispered. Please, just a few more hours. Dawn came. The fever broke. Sam's breathing eased. Color began to return to his cheeks. By evening he was sitting up and asking for food. By the 3rd day he was completely recovered, stronger than he had been in months. By morning the boy's color was better. By evening he was sitting up and asking for food. In 3 days he was completely recovered, and Ruth's last bargaining chip was gone. Cade sent word to Webb in Denver explaining what had happened. Webb's response was blunt. Without proof of Ruth's expertise, without something tangible to show she was more than the accusations claimed, their case became significantly weaker. But Cade did not regret it, not for a second. Ruth, however, withdrew into herself. She cooked and cleaned and cared for Sam with the same competence as before. But something had changed. She no longer sat with them at dinner, no longer met Cade's eyes, no longer allowed herself even the smallest hope. "You are angry," Cade said one night, finding her in the kitchen long after everyone else had gone to bed. "No, I am realistic." "Ruth, you made your choice. I respect it. Sam is your son. Of course you chose him." She kneaded bread with sharp, aggressive movements. "But do not ask me to pretend this does not change things. It changes nothing. It changes everything." She slammed the dough onto the table. "I am going to lose Cade. Cole will take me back to St. Louis. I will spend years fighting in courts I cannot afford against lawyers I cannot beat. I will lose everything, again, and there is nothing you can do to stop it. I will find a way." "There is no way." Her voice broke. "This is my life. This is what happens to people like me. We run and we hide, and eventually we get caught, and we pay for crimes we did not commit." "No." "Yes." Ruth wiped her eyes with the back of her flour-covered hand. "I should never have come here, should never have let myself care about you or Sam or this place. All I did was make it hurt worse when I have to leave." Cade crossed the kitchen in 3 strides. He took her flour-covered hands in his and held them tight. "Listen to me. You are not leaving. We are going to fight this, and we are going to win." "You cannot promise that." "I can promise that I will not give up, that I will use every resource I have, that I will stand between you and anyone who tries to take you." He paused. "And I can promise that you are not alone anymore." Ruth looked at their joined hands, at his face, at the determination in his eyes. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you care so much?" Cade could have lied, could have said it was about justice or fairness or doing the right thing. But standing in the warm kitchen with her hands in his, he found he could not lie. "Because I am falling in love with you." The words hung in the air between them. Ruth's eyes went wide, shocked. "You do not mean that." "I do. You barely know me." "I know enough." "Cade, you are confused. Grateful because I helped Sam, but that is not love. Do not tell me what I feel." His voice was rough. "I loved my wife. I know what love feels like, and I know what I feel when I look at you." Ruth pulled her hands away. "You are making a mistake. Maybe, but it is my mistake to make." She turned away facing the window, her shoulders rigid. "I cannot give you what you want. I cannot be Sarah. I cannot replace her. I do not want you to replace her. I want you to be you. You do not even know who I am." "Then tell me." Ruth was silent for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. "I am a woman who ran away instead of fighting. I am a woman who let her husband die because I was not fast enough to save him. I am a woman with nothing to offer except recipes and hard work. You are the woman who saved my son, who brought light back into this house, who made me believe that life could be good again." Cade stepped closer but did not touch her. "You are the woman I choose. If you will have me." Ruth turned to look at him. Her face was wet with tears, her eyes searching his for any sign of doubt or pity or charity. She found none. "I am going to break your heart," she said softly. "Probably. When Cole takes me away, it will destroy Sam. Then we will not let Cole take you away. You are the most stubborn man I have ever met. Is that a yes?" Ruth laughed through her tears. "It is not a no." Cade pulled her into his arms. She resisted for a moment, then surrendered, pressing her face against his chest. He could feel her shaking. "I am so tired," she whispered. "So tired of running and hiding and being afraid." "Then stop. Stay here. Let me help you fight." "What if we lose?" Then we lose together." They stood in the kitchen holding each other while the bread rose and the night deepened outside. It was not a promise of happily ever after. It was not even a promise of tomorrow. But it was something. A moment of peace. A shared burden. A choice made together. And for now, that was enough. But outside in the darkness beyond the ranch, Harrison Cole was making plans of his own. He had allies in Silverbrook now. Mrs. Blackwood had promised him the full support of the church committee. The sheriff was too weak to oppose him. And he had something else, something he had been saving for the right moment. Evidence. Real evidence. Documents that would prove Ruth Harper was exactly what her late husband's family claimed she was. A thief, a manipulator, a woman who had married for money and killed for it. The documents were forgeries, of course. Excellent forgeries, but forgeries nonetheless. But in a small-town court with the right judge and the right pressure, they would be enough. Cole smiled to himself in the darkness. Cade Mercer thought he was protecting the woman he loved, but all he was doing was painting a target on both their backs. And when Cole was done, neither of them would walk away unscathed. The storm was coming, and it would destroy everything in its path. The forged documents arrived on a Friday morning, delivered by Cole himself, with the ceremony of a man who knew he held all the cards. He came to Thunder Creek Ranch flanked by 2 hired men wearing deputy badges that looked too new to be real, but the guns on their hips were real enough. Cade met them in the yard. Jake Patterson stood beside him, rifle casually cradled in his arms. The other ranch hands watched from the barn, tense and ready. "Mr. Mercer, I think it is time we settled this matter." Cole pulled a thick envelope from his coat. "I have new evidence, documents from St. Louis that prove Mrs. Harper's guilt beyond any doubt." "Let me see them." Cole handed over the papers with the confidence of a poker player showing a royal flush. Cade read through them slowly, his face giving nothing away. There were bank statements showing large withdrawals from the estate account, receipts with Ruth's alleged signature, a letter supposedly written by Ruth to an accomplice discussing how to steal the bearer bonds, even a sworn affidavit from a witness claiming they saw Ruth start the fire that killed her husband. It was comprehensive, damning, and completely fabricated. Cade could tell because the handwriting in the letter was nothing like Ruth's careful, precise script, because the bank statements showed transactions on dates when Ruth had already left St. Louis, because the whole thing felt too neat, too perfect, like a story constructed to reach a predetermined conclusion. But he could not prove any of that, not standing in his yard with Cole's hired guns watching his every move. "Where did you get these?" "From the family's lawyers in St. Louis. They have been investigating for months, building their case." Cole's smile was sharp. "I think you will find it changes the situation considerably." "This proves nothing." "It proves enough." Cole gestured to his men. "I am taking Mrs. Harper into custody, today. You can cooperate, or you can be arrested for obstruction. Your choice." Jake's rifle shifted slightly. The hired guns noticed. Hands moved toward holsters. "Everyone calm down." Cade's voice cut through the tension. "Nobody is getting arrested today." "Mr. Mercer, these documents are fake. Any fool can see that, and I will prove it." Cade met Cole's eyes. "But if you want to escalate this into bloodshed, I promise you will not walk away from this ranch alive." It was not a threat. It was a statement of fact. Cole saw it in Cade's eyes, in the set of Jake's shoulders, in the way the other ranch hands had quietly armed themselves. Cole calculated odds and did not like his chances. "Fine. You have until Monday. After that I come back with a real federal marshal and enough men to take this whole ranch if I have to." He gathered his reins. "Enjoy your weekend, Mercer. It is the last peaceful one you will have." They rode off, leaving dust and dread in their wake. Ruth had watched the entire confrontation from the kitchen window. When Cade came inside, she was sitting at the table, her face pale but composed. "How bad is it?" Cade showed her the documents. She read through them with growing horror. "These are lies. All of it. I never wrote that letter. Those are not my signatures. I was not even in St. Louis on these dates." "I know. But can you prove it?" Cade sat down across from her. Not yet, but we have until Monday. 3 days. Ruth laughed bitterly. 3 days to undo months of careful planning by people with unlimited resources and no conscience. We will find a way. Cade, she reached across the table and took his hand. I need you to promise me something. Anything. When Monday comes, if we have not found a way to prove my innocence, I need you to let me go. No fighting, no last stand. Just let Cole take me. No. Please, I cannot watch you throw your life away for me. I cannot watch Sam lose another parent because you were too stubborn to surrender. I am not letting you go. You have to, for Sam's sake, for your own sake. Her grip tightened. Promise me. Cade wanted to refuse, wanted to tell her that he would fight to his last breath, but looking into her eyes, seeing the desperation there, he could not. I promise. He lied. Ruth knew he was lying, but did not call him on it. Instead, she stood and went back to her work, kneading bread with the fierce concentration of someone trying to outrun their thoughts. That afternoon, Cade rode into Silverbrook. He needed to see Sheriff Garrett to understand what Cole's next move might be. But what he found in town was worse than he expected. The petition Mrs. Blackwood had circulated now had over 200 signatures. It was posted on the door of the church, the general store, the hotel. A public declaration that Ruth Harper was unwelcome and anyone who supported her would face social and economic consequences. Businesses that had once been friendly now turned Cade away. The blacksmith refused his order. The feed store clerk claimed they were out of stock on items Cade could see sitting on the shelves. Even Reverend Morrison crossed the street to avoid speaking to him. The only person who would talk to Cade was Miss Emma Chen. She found him outside the general store, standing in the street like a man trying to figure out where he belonged. Mr. Mercer, I am sorry about all of this. Not your fault. I tried to speak against it, to tell people they were making a mistake. Emma's face was sad. They did not listen. They never do. There is something you should know. Emma glanced around to make sure no one was listening. Mrs. Blackwood has been meeting with Cole several times, in private, at the bank. Cade's attention sharpened. The bank, her husband's bank. I saw them through the window when I was walking past. They looked very friendly, very conspiratorial. What were they discussing? I could not hear, but I saw Cole hand Mr. Blackwood some papers, and Mr. Blackwood looked very pleased. Cade's mind raced. Why would a deputy marshal be having private meetings with a small-town banker unless this was about more than just Ruth? Thank you, Emma. Be careful, Mr. Mercer. Whatever they are planning, it is bigger than just Mrs. Harper. Cade went straight to Sheriff Garrett's office. He found the sheriff half-drunk, staring at a wanted poster with empty eyes. Garrett, we need to talk. The sheriff looked up blearily. Mercer, come to turn yourself in. For what? Harboring a fugitive. Barrage. Threatening a federal's officer. Take your pick. Garrett took another drink. Cole says he is bringing in reinforcements on Monday. Real marshals this time. When they get here, I am supposed to arrest you if you interfere. You going to do it? Garrett was quiet for a long moment. I do not know. I do not want to. But I got a family to think about. A job to keep. And a conscience to live with. Conscience does not feed my kids, Mercer. Cade understood. Garrett was weak, but he was not evil. Just a man caught between what was right and what was easy. Like most men, he would probably choose easy. Tell me about the bank, Cade said. About Mr. Blackwood and Cole. Garrett's eyes shifted. What about them? They have been meeting, privately. Why? I do not know anything about that. You are a terrible liar, Garrett. The sheriff deflated. Look, I do not know the details, but I heard Blackwood talking to the land office agent last week. Something about foreclosures. About properties coming available soon. What properties? He did not say. But Garrett would not meet Cade's eyes. Cade felt ice form in his gut. My ranch. They are after my ranch. I do not know that for certain, but you suspect it. Garrett said nothing, which was answer enough. Cade left the sheriff's office with his mind churning. This was not just about punishing Ruth for crimes she did not commit. This was about taking everything Cade had built, his land, his livelihood, his future. The pieces started to fit together. Cole was working for Ruth's late husband's family, yes, but he was also working with the Blackwoods. And if Cade was arrested for harboring a fugitive, if he was tied up in legal trouble and unable to manage his affairs, the bank could call in his loans, could foreclose, could take Thunder Creek Ranch and sell it for a fraction of its worth. It was elegant, cruel, and entirely legal. Cade rode back to the ranch as the sun set behind the mountains. He found Ruth in the garden with Sam teaching him about the herbs she had planted. The boys' laughter carried on the evening breeze, sweet and innocent. Cade stood and watched them for a long moment. His son, the woman he loved, the life he had started to believe he could have again. He would not let them take this away, not without a fight. That night, after Sam was in bed, Cade gathered Jake and the other ranch hands in the barn. 6 men in total, loyal and tough. "I need to know if you will stand with me," Cade said. "On Monday, Cole is coming back with more men. If I resist, it could get ugly. Some of you might get hurt, might even get arrested. So I am giving you a choice. Stand with me or ride out now. I will hold no grudges either way." The men looked at each other. Then Jake spoke up. "Boss, I have been working this ranch for 10 years. You have always been fair, always paid us on time, always treated us like men, not hired hands." He paused. "If you say Miss Ruth is innocent, that is good enough for me. I stand with you." The other men nodded agreement, not because they particularly cared about Ruth, but because they respected Cade, because loyalty was a currency worth more than gold in this hard country. "All right then, here is what we do." Cade laid out his plan. It was desperate, risky, and probably doomed to fail. But it was all they had. Saturday and Sunday passed in tense preparation. Cade sent riders to neighboring ranches calling in favors, asking for support. Some agreed, others refused. By Sunday evening, Cade had 15 men willing to stand with him. Not enough to win a war, but enough to make Cole think twice. Ruth spent the weekend baking. It was how she dealt with stress, losing herself in the familiar rhythms of measuring and mixing. The kitchen filled with pies and cakes and breads, more than they could possibly eat. "What are you going to do with all of this?" Cade asked. "I do not know. Maybe it is stupid, but I need to do something with my hands." She shaped another loaf. "If I stop moving, I will think, and if I think, I will fall apart." Cade came around the table and wrapped his arms around her from behind. "We are going to get through this." "You keep saying that." "Because I believe it." Ruth leaned back against him. "What happens if we lose? What happens to Sam?" "We will not lose." "But if we do?" Cade turned her around to face him. "If we do, then Sam will know that his father fought for what was right, that he did not back down from bullies, that he protected the people he loved." He cupped her face in his hands. "That is not a bad lesson for a boy to learn." Ruth kissed him then, not gently or carefully, but with the desperate intensity of someone who knew time was running out. Cade responded in kind, pulling her close, trying to pour 3 years of loneliness and longing into one moment. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. "I love you," Ruth said. "I should have said it before, but I love you." "I know. If this goes badly, it will not. But if it does, I need you to know. These last few weeks being here with you and Sam, this has been the happiest I have been in years, maybe ever." Her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you for giving me that." Cade kissed her forehead. "This is not goodbye. This is just the hard part before the happy ending." Ruth wanted to believe him, but she had learned long ago that life did not always give you happy endings. Sometimes it just gave you moments. And if this was her last moment, at least it was a good one. Sunday night, Cade could not sleep. He sat in his office going over accounts and deeds and legal documents, making sure everything was in order, making sure that if the worst happened, Sam would be taken care of. There was a knock at the door. Jake Patterson entered, looking grim. "Boss, we got a problem." "What kind of problem?" I was in town earlier. Overheard some talk at the saloon. Cole has been spreading a story. Says you and Miss Ruth are having an inappropriate relationship. Says you hired her as your cook, but you are really keeping her as your mistress." Cade's hands clenched into fists. "That is a lie." "I know that, but people are talking, saying you are not in your right mind. That grief over Miss Sarah has made you crazy, that you are not fit to raise Sam. They are going to try to take my son. That is what I am thinking. Blackwood could petition the court. Say you are morally unfit. Get Sam placed with a guardian. It was the final piece of the puzzle. Take Cade's freedom. Take his land. Take his son. Destroy him completely. Over my dead body. Might come to that, boss." Cade looked at Jake. "If things go bad tomorrow, I need you to get Sam out. Take him to Denver to Marcus Webb. He will know what to do." "Boss? Promise me." Jake nodded slowly. "I promise." Monday morning dawned cold and clear. Frost covered the ground, turning the world silver. It would have been beautiful if Cade had been in any state to notice. He dressed carefully. Clean clothes, his good coat, the gun belt his father had given him 20 years ago. He looked in the mirror and saw a man prepared for war. Sam was awake early, sensing the tension. "Papa, is today the day the bad man comes back?" "Yes, son." "Are you going to let him take Miss Ruth?" Cade knelt down to Sam's level. "I am going to do everything I can to keep her here, but I need you to be brave no matter what happens. Can you do that?" Sam's lip trembled, but he nodded. "I can be brave. That is my boy." Ruth made breakfast. Nobody ate much. They sat around the table in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. At 9 o'clock the riders appeared. Not just Cole and his 2 hired guns. A full federal marshal with proper credentials. 6 more deputized men. And riding at the back of the group, Mr. Blackwood and Mrs. Blackwood in their fine carriage. They came to witness the spectacle. To see Ruth Harper dragged away in chains. To watch Cade Mercer humiliated and destroyed. Cade met them in the yard. His men were spread out behind him, armed and ready. The 2 groups faced each other like armies before a battle. The federal marshal dismounted. He was an older man, gray-bearded with tired eyes that had seen too much. His badge was real, his authority unquestionable. "Mr. Mercer, I am Marshal William Frost. I have a warrant for the arrest of Ruth Harper. I am asking you to surrender her peacefully." "I cannot do that, Marshal." "Cannot or will not?" "Both." Frost sighed. "Mr. Mercer, I understand your feelings. But the law is the law. If you interfere, I will have no choice but to arrest you as well." "Then I suppose you will have to arrest me." Frost looked past Cade to the armed men behind him. "You really want to do this? You really want to start a shooting war over a woman accused of theft and murder? She is innocent. That is for a court to decide, not you. The courts are corrupt, bought and paid for by people with more money than conscience. Maybe, maybe not. But that is how our system works. We follow the law even when the law is imperfect." It was a good argument, a reasonable argument, the kind of argument that usually worked on reasonable men. But Cade was past reasonable. "No." Frost's hand moved toward his gun. Cole grinned. The hired men tensed. And then from behind the marshal's group, a new rider appeared. He was young, maybe 25, riding a horse that looked about ready to collapse. His clothes were covered in trail dust. He had clearly been riding hard for a long time. "Marshal Frost, wait." Everyone turned. The young man dismounted and stumbled forward, pulling papers from his saddlebag. "Who are you?" Frost demanded. "Thomas Brennan, attorney from St. Louis. I have evidence. Evidence that changes everything." Cade's heart leaped. Marcus Webb had sent someone. The lawyer had actually come through. Cole's face went white. "You cannot just—" "Shut up, Cole." Frost took the papers from Brennan and started reading. His expression changed. Surprise, then anger, then cold fury. "Where did you get these St. Louis court records, public documents? It took me 2 weeks of digging, but I found them." Brennan looked at Ruth, who had come to stand beside Cade. "Mrs. Harper, the estate case was settled in your favor 18 months ago. The court ruled that your husband's family had no claim. All charges were dropped. The warrant for your arrest should have been vacated." "Should have been," Frost growled. "Someone kept it active. Someone with enough influence to manipulate the system. Someone who wanted Mrs. Harper to believe she was still wanted, still in danger." Brennan pointed at Cole. "Someone who was working for the family and had reasons of his own to keep her running." Frost turned to Cole. "You want to explain this?" Cole's mask of authority crumbled. "Those documents are probably forgeries. You cannot trust—" "I can verify them by telegram within the hour, but looking at your face right now, I am betting they are real." Frost's hand went to his gun. "Harrison Cole, you are under arrest for fraud, impersonating a federal officer, and abuse of legal process." "You cannot arrest me. I have done nothing wrong." "You falsified evidence. You enforced a dead warrant, and I am betting you took money from the family to do it." Frost gestured to his men. "Cuff him." Cole tried to run. He made it 3 steps before Frost's deputies tackled him to the ground. They dragged him up fighting and cursing. "This is not over," Cole shouted. "Blackwood will—" He stopped, realizing what he had just said. Frost's eyes narrowed. "Blackwood as in Mr. Blackwood sitting in that carriage over there." Silence fell like a hammer. Mr. Blackwood tried to look innocent. "I have no idea what he is talking about." "Really?" "Because I am suddenly very interested in why a deputy marshal would be having private meetings with a small-town banker." Frost turned to Cade. "Mr. Mercer, you have anything to add to this conversation?" Cade pulled out the forged documents Cole had shown him on Friday. "He brought these to my ranch, claimed they proved Mrs. Harper's guilt, but they are fake. The signatures do not match, the dates are wrong, and I am betting if you look closely you will find they were prepared right here in Silverbrook, maybe even at Blackwood's bank." Frost examined the documents. His face grew darker with each page. "Mrs. Blackwood," he said quietly, "would you and your husband please step out of the carriage?" Mrs. Blackwood looked like she had swallowed a wasp. "Marshal, I hardly think—" "Now." They climbed out. "Mr." Blackwood was sweating despite the cold. Mrs. Blackwood maintained her dignity, but her hands trembled. "Cole came to you with a proposition," Frost said. "It was not a question. He said he was hunting a fugitive, but he also said he could help you get something you wanted. What was it, the Mercer Ranch?" "That is absurd," Blackwood blustered. "We have no interest in—" "Save it," Frost gestured to his men. "Search their carriage, and someone send for the land office records. I want to see if there have been any recent inquiries about foreclosures on Thunder Creek Ranch." Mrs. Blackwood broke first. "This is outrageous. We are respectable members of this community. We will not be treated like common criminals." "Then you should not have acted like common criminals." Frost's voice was ice. "You conspired with a corrupt official to ruin an innocent woman, to steal a man's land, to break up a family. That makes you worse than common criminals. It makes you filth." Blackwood actually staggered as if struck. Around them the crowd that had gathered to watch Ruth's arrest now watched the Blackwoods' humiliation. Miss Emma Chin stood at the front, her face showing grim satisfaction. Doc Wilson was there too, shaking his head in disgust. Even Reverend Morrison looked appalled. The town had come to see justice served. They were getting it, just not in the way they expected. Marshal Frost's men found the evidence in the Blackwoods' carriage, documents showing their plan to foreclose on Cade's ranch once he was arrested, letters from Cole detailing his work in keeping Ruth on the run, even drafts of the forged bank statements waiting to be finalized. It was over. The conspiracy was exposed. The villains were caught. Frost turned to Ruth. "Mrs. Harper, on behalf of the federal government, I apologize. You have been terribly wronged. The warrant against you is vacated. You are a free woman." Ruth did not move, did not speak. She looked like she could not quite believe what was happening. Cade took her hand. "You heard him. You are free." "Free," Ruth repeated. The word seemed foreign in her mouth. Then slowly the reality sank in. Her eyes filled with tears. Her knees buckled. Cade caught her before she fell, holding her as she sobbed against his chest. Sam ran from the house where he had been watching from a window. "Miss Ruth, you are staying. You do not have to go." Ruth knelt and pulled him into her arms. "I am staying, sweetheart. I am staying." The crowd began to disperse. Some people looked ashamed. Others looked relieved. A few brave souls approached to apologize. Miss Emma came first. "I am so sorry for what you endured. It was wrong." Doc Wilson followed. "If there is anything I can do." Even Reverend Morrison found his courage. "The church owes you an apology, Mrs. Harper. We failed in our Christian duty." Ruth accepted their words with grace. She had won. But she was too tired to gloat, too relieved to feel anything but gratitude. As the Blackwoods were led away in handcuffs, Mrs. Blackwood's carefully constructed social empire crumbled around her. The women who had signed her petition now avoided her eyes. The men who had deferred to her husband now turned their backs. Power built on fear and manipulation never lasts. It only takes one moment of truth to bring it all crashing down. Marshal Frost approached Cade as his men prepared to transport the prisoners to Denver. "Mr. Mercer, you should know. Young Brennan rode for 72 hours straight to get here. He said Marcus Webb told him it was a matter of life and death." It was. "Webb also said to tell you that you are even. Whatever debt you thought you owed him, this pays it in full." Cade nodded. "Thank the Marshal and Brennan for me." "I will. And Mercer," Frost paused, "you are a lucky man. Not many people get a second chance at happiness. Do not waste it." "I do not intend to." That evening, after the excitement had died down and the last of the well-wishers had gone, Cade found Ruth in the kitchen. She was baking again, but this time the frantic energy was gone. She worked with calm, peaceful movements. "You are making a cake," he observed. "A celebration cake. We earned it." Cade leaned against the doorframe and watched her work. "I have a question for you." "Ask." "When this is all over, when the dust settles and life goes back to normal, what do you want to do? Do you want to open a bakery in town? Do you want to keep working here? Do you want something else entirely?" Ruth looked up from her mixing bowl. "What are you really asking, Cade?" "I am asking if you want to stay, not as my cook, not as my employee, but as my wife." Ruth set down her spoon very carefully. "That is quite a question. It deserves quite an answer. Are you sure, really sure, because people will talk. They will say you are marrying beneath you, that I am not good enough, that I am only after your money. Let them talk. I stopped caring what people think about 6 weeks ago when I hired you over everyone's objections. And Sam, have you thought about how this will affect him? Sam adores you. He has been asking when you are going to be his real mama for the past 2 weeks. Ruth's eyes filled with tears again. He has, every single day. She wiped her eyes with her apron. I am a mess, Cade. I have nothing to bring to this marriage except debt and scandal and a trunk full of recipes. You brought me back to life. You saved my son. You filled this house with warmth and light and hope. Cade crossed the kitchen and took her flour-covered hands in his. You brought me everything that matters. Everything else is just details. You are going to regret this. Probably. But I will regret not asking even more. Ruth laughed through her tears. That is not a very romantic proposal. You want romance, fine. Cade dropped to one knee right there on the kitchen floor. Ruth Harper, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, Sam's mother, and the most stubborn, competent, dignified woman I have ever had the privilege to know? That is better. Is that a yes? That is a yes. Cade stood and kissed her, properly this time, not with desperation or fear, but with joy, with certainty, with the knowledge that this was right. When they finally pulled apart, Sam was standing in the doorway, grinning from ear to ear. Does this mean Miss Ruth is going to be my mama? If you want her to be. Sam ran across the kitchen and threw himself at both of them. They caught him together, the three of them tangling into one laughing, crying embrace. I want her to be, Sam said. I want her to be my mama forever. Ruth held him tight. Then that is what I will be. They stood there in the warm kitchen surrounded by the smell of baking cake and the promise of tomorrow. A family. Broken pieces that had somehow fitted themselves back together into something new and beautiful. Outside, winter was coming. The mountains were already dusted with snow. But inside Thunder Creek Ranch, it felt like spring. The wedding took place 3 weeks later. Not in the Silverbrook Church, which was still tainted by association with Mrs. Blackwood, but outside at the ranch. Doc Wilson officiated since Reverend Morrison was too ashamed to show his face. The guest list was small: Jake Patterson and the ranch hands, Miss Emma Chen, Marcus Webb, who came all the way from Denver to see the happy ending he had helped create, Thomas Brennan, the young lawyer who had ridden through the night to save them. Ruth wore a simple blue dress she had made herself. Cade wore his best suit. Sam stood between them, holding both their hands, grinning so hard his face hurt. Doc Wilson cleared his throat. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Cade Mercer and Ruth Harper, and I have to say, it is about damn time." Laughter rippled through the small crowd. "I have known Cade for 15 years, known him through good times and tragedy, known him as a husband, a father, a friend, and I have never seen him happier than he has been these past few months." Doc looked at Ruth. "And you, Ruth Harper, you have shown this community what true dignity looks like. You have taught us that strength is not about fighting back. It is about standing firm when the world tries to break you." He turned to Cade. "Do you, Cade Mercer, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold in sickness and in health for richer or poorer as long as you both shall live?" "I do." "And do you, Ruth Harper, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold in sickness and in health for richer or poorer as long as you both shall live?" Ruth looked at Cade, at Sam, at the ranch spread out behind them and the mountains rising in the distance, at the life she had never dared to dream she could have. "I do." "Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Colorado, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Cade, you may kiss your bride." Cade did, thoroughly. The small crowd cheered. When they finally pulled apart, Sam tugged on Ruth's skirt. "Can I call you Mama now?" Ruth knelt down and cupped his face in her hands. "You can call me whatever feels right to you." Sam thought about it for exactly 2 seconds. "Mama." It was the sweetest word Ruth had ever heard. The reception was simple, but joyful. Ruth's cakes, which had been rejected by every shop in Silverbrook, were devoured with enthusiasm. Jake Patterson made a toast that was slightly inappropriate but heartfelt. Miss Emma cried happy tears. As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky gold and crimson, Cade pulled Ruth aside. "Happy. Happier than I have any right to be. You have every right. You earned this." Ruth leaned against him. "We earned this. Together." They stood in comfortable silence, watching their guests celebrate, watching Sam chase fireflies in the fading light. This was what home felt like. Not a place, but a feeling. Safety. Belonging. Love. "Cade." "Yes. Thank you. For believing in me when no one else would. For fighting for me when I had given up fighting for myself. You never gave up. You just needed someone to stand beside you. I am glad it was you. So am I." In town, the aftermath of the scandal continued. Mrs. Blackwood's church committee dissolved. Half the women who had signed the petition made quiet donations to charity in Ruth's name, trying to atone for their participation. Mr. Blackwood's bank was investigated and found to have multiple irregularities. He would spend the next 5 years in federal prison. Harrison Cole received 10 years for fraud and corruption. In his cell, he had plenty of time to regret the day he decided to bend the law for profit. The Blackwoods' fall from grace was complete and permanent. Evelyn Blackwood left Silverbrook 6 months later, moving to San Francisco, where no one knew her shame. She died alone 15 years later, forgotten by the society she had once ruled. Justice, as it turned out, had very long arms. But at Thunder Creek Ranch, life moved forward. Sam grew tall and strong, his childhood illness a distant memory. He learned to ride and rope and run the ranch alongside his father. He also learned to bake, spending hours in the kitchen with Ruth, mastering the recipes from her mother's journal. Cade's ranch prospered. With the threat of foreclosure gone and his reputation restored, he expanded his holdings. He became one of the most successful ranchers in Colorado, respected not just for his business acumen, but for his integrity. Ruth opened a bakery in Silverbrook 2 years after the wedding. She called it Sarah's Kitchen, naming it after Cade's first wife, in a gesture that honored the past while embracing the future. It became famous throughout the territory for its German pastries and healing teas. Women came from miles around, not just to buy bread, but to seek Ruth's advice on herbs and remedies. She never forgot what it felt like to be desperate and alone. So her bakery became a place where outcasts could find work, where women running from bad situations could find help, where kindness was given freely to anyone who needed it. And every Sunday the Mercer family attended church together. Sam between his parents, all 3 of them sitting in the front pew that had once been denied to Ruth. Not as a statement of pride, but as a quiet assertion that they belonged, that they had earned their place through trial and triumph. Years later, when Sam was grown and had children of his own, he would tell them stories about his mother, about how she came to them as a stranger and became the heart of their family, about how she taught him that worth is not given by others, but earned through character, about how the best things in life are worth fighting for. And he would take down the old leather journal, the one filled with recipes and careful German script, and teach his own children to bake. Passing down not just food, but wisdom, not just techniques, but love, because that was Ruth's true legacy. Not the cakes and pies and breads, though those were excellent, but the understanding that every person has value. That dignity cannot be taken, only surrendered. That love, when it is real, is worth any price. On warm summer evenings, Cade and Ruth would sit on their porch and watch the sun set behind the mountains. They would hold hands and talk about their day and plan for tomorrow. Sometimes they spoke of the past, of the trials they had endured. But mostly they talked about the future, about grandchildren and harvests and all the ordinary blessings of a life well lived. "Do you ever regret it?" Ruth asked one evening. "Choosing me? Taking on all that trouble?" Cade squeezed her hand. "Every single day." Ruth swatted his arm. "You are supposed to say no. I am supposed to tell the truth. And the truth is, I regret nothing, not one moment, not one fight, not one second of doubt." He pulled her close. "Marrying you was the smartest thing I ever did. Well, second smartest. Hiring you was first. You are impossible. You love me anyway." "I do. God help me, I do." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars came out one by one, filling the Colorado sky with light. Inside the house they could hear Sam playing with his children, laughter and footsteps, and the sounds of a home filled with love. This was the happy ending. Not perfect, because life is never perfect, but real, earned, true. And in the end, that was all that mattered.